It's Mazzy here live from Seattle, and the perfect albums, 25 perfect albums. This could be a thread, but I decided to do this based on Andrew's Tales from the Crate, who does his Old Man Night weekly with his pals. And except for one of them, they're not old men, they're much younger than I am. The one guy, sorry, I don't know your names, but the white-haired guy is in my ballpark, I think. But they did a video just yesterday, I believe, and I'll link it below. It's a 2-hour-long video because they all go around. There's like 6 of them, and they share perfect albums. Now, what are perfect albums? What we're saying here, what they're saying here, what I'm taking with, but I'm pushing more, including 25, are records that you can just play beginning to end. Every song is great. Now, is every song a killer? Probably not. But it flows as an album. It's wonderful. These are not necessarily my all-time favorite albums. They're amongst my all-time favorite albums, but these are some records I chose for this particular video. Now, some of the artists you'll see are obvious, and some records and albums by, say, the Byrds or the Kinks, I left out completely. Left out Neil Young, left out the first self-titled Asylum Warren Zevon album, left out Ry Cooder. I wanted to include records that I really, seriously, to this day, go and pull and play straight through a lot. So if I had these, only these 25 records, would I be happy with that? No, of course not. Maybe Mr. Minimal in Hamburg would, but I wouldn't. But I would be very pleased if these were the only ones. Now, amongst several of the groups, they're not necessarily my favorites, but I'll kind of discuss it as I go along. Again, most of these records, probably a lot of you know, maybe not. Again, they're not necessarily even the quote, cliched best album by that particular artist. Now, a few little rules I made for myself. I have no jazz in this section, so if you're a jazz freak and that's all you want to see, hey, look at another video. Maybe I'll do that at some point. No avant-garde classical soundtracks, things like that. So I stuck to, pop rock and the country and the like. So, of course, as soon as you watch and go through it, you're going to have things. How come you didn't include this? How come you didn't include that? Well, make it a thread and do it your fucking self. Okay? So, I am starting with one Beatle record. Just because I kept thinking about, do I pull a Beatle record? The cliche for me is Revolver's my favorite Beatle record. Of course, there's Sgt. Pepper, which is great to be in the end. I watched a video the other day, Lionel Richie. He says, songs that ruin record. He said Yellow Submarine. It's funny. I listened to Revolver the other day, and ever since, even though I'm fine with Yellow Submarine, when I listened to it, I started thinking about Lionel Richie, and that Yellow Submarine stuck out like a sore thumb. You kind of wish it wasn't there, maybe, but it's cool. And you need to throw Ringo a bone once in a while. So I'm starting with Rubber Soul, but I'm starting with the American Rubber Soul. Now, those of you who don't know, most of you do, but don't, the American records of the Beatles back in the day, up until Sgt. Pepper, were all different than the original UK counterparts. Now, the UK versions are what the Beatles created, the art the Beatles created. And Dave Dexter, the producer, engineer at Capitol Records, basically remixed songs, reconfigured the record, added reverb bumps on records, and would take things from singles and stick it on records. And also the American versions only had 12 tracks, where pretty much the UK versions had 14 tracks. Milking you. So probably 3 records for every 2 records they actually made. But this is a stereo copy. It's probably my original stereo. I have a mono and a stereo, yes. So it's the Rainbow label. What's different about this, some would argue, and UK people who should listen to this and should grab this if you can, it makes it a whole different feel. Rubber Soul always had a country acoustic feel to it. This is even more so. It opens up with I've Just Seen a Face by Paul. Has Norwegian Wood, You Won't See Me, Think for Yourself, the word Michelle, It's Only Love, Girl, I'm Looking Through You, In My Life, Wait and Run for Your Life. So the more electronic things they're getting to are thrown off this record. So I think this is a perfect record, 12 songs, beginning to end, a perfect album. The self-titled Band album. I think this is an album that most people who love the band would agree with, that this is probably their best album. Of course, their most famous is Music from Big Pink. This is their second album, self-titled. From Across the Great Divide to Rag Mama Rag, to The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, to Cripple Creek, Whispering Pines, Jeremiah Surrender, King Harvest, and on and on. Look Out Cleveland. Every song is fantastic. The band, again, produced by John Simon, as I recall, and it's an amazing record. So the band, a perfect record. The second full-length LP by the artist from Australia, Courtney Barnett. Great record. Her first record, I think most people might think is her best. I don't. This is great. It's got a real punk attitude to it, but melodic in a way. Really well recorded. I just love it. Every song. Hopefulness. City Looks Pretty. It's Not Your Mother, I'm Not Your Bitch. I'm not your mother, I'm not your bitch. Ending out with Sunday Roast. Every song is great. Wonderful record. Courtney Barnett from Australia. She's due for something new, I think. Did see her once. Love this woman from Australia. I'm a huge Beck fan, and Beck, is always fusing musical genres and styles, and just going back and forth from country to soul to hip hop to mood music. I would say my favorite are the moody ones. I love Odelay, and of course I love Morning Phase and Sea Change. But I'd say this is his best record song-wise. Song for song, this is a perfect album. Mutations. This is his pop rock 70s style album. He sounds like David Bowie on this. He sounds like Ray Davis of the Kinks on this. Just every song is great. It's got some country influence like the Kinks would do with Muswell Hillbillies and others. Just a wonderful record, from Cold Brains to Canceled Check, Dead Melodies, Bottle of Blues, Static. Really great record. Mutations, a perfect record. I've showed this one before. There are a few I've shown. The very first Bee Gees record. This is one I have shown a lot. I almost didn't include it because of that, but people always tend to think of the Bee Gees as that disco band from Saturday Night Fever. This is their first album, 1967, one of the best pop psychedelic albums you'll ever hear. It's got, every song is great. From Turn of the Century, Holiday was the song that got me into the Bee Gees. Every Christian Linehearted, Craze Fit Kirk, The New York Mining Disaster 1941, one of their early singles. When they came, they were from England, emigrated to Australia, went back to London and recorded, and rest is history. Had a great career early on, had a lull, then the disco thing hit and Saturday Night Fever hit, and it became bigger. One of my favorite songs I've said so many times on here is Please Read Me. Even Nina Simone did a beautiful cover version of that song. Every song is great. Tim Buckley's Greeting from LA, a perfect album. Now, most people who love Tim Buckley like his moody, folky, dirgy, ethereal folk music. This is not that. This is the one that stands out. Not necessarily good for some people, but so different. It's a soulful, funky, loud, rockin' album, especially side one. However, the whole record is great. I prefer side one. I give that the edge, but it's only 3 songs on side one: Move With Me, Get On Top, and Sweet Surrender. Sexy soul with that great voice. Jeff Buckley's father, Tim Buckley. Greetings from LA. The original copy on Straight Records, distributed by Warner Brothers. Amazing. If you don't know, LA used to be the capital of the small world in America. No longer, actually. California has emission controls, unlike some other states. This is probably an obvious choice for a lot of people, but the very first Buffalo Springfield record, actually, yeah, For What It's Worth. I mean, this song, For What It's Worth, protest song about the riots on Sunset Strip in the 60s. This record came out in 1966, ahead of its time, way ahead of its time, although For What It's Worth became a pretty big hit. It's kind of what's going on now in Portland, Oregon, if you've been watching. Obscene, obscene, obscene. Military states, Gestapo tactics, people, these quote, soldiers, government, not wearing ID, not wearing any kind of numbers, putting people in blank vans. Watch the guy that just got hit, who was a former military, just went to talk to him. They started beating the shit out of his legs, and he stood there. It was like, he kind of was like Schwarzenegger, standing so stoic. And then he was laced with tear gas, and really sad what's going on there. And they're about to roll that out to Chicago too. Go and Say Goodbye. I mean, Richie Furet's singing, Steve Still's singing amazing. Neil Young too, but he was almost like secondary. Nowadays, Clancy Can't Even Sing. Beautiful, beautiful song written by Neil Young. He doesn't even sing it. They didn't let Neil sing as much on this record. Out of My Mind, that one he sang on. Beautiful, Burned. You know, the second album's probably better as a greater album, but I'm putting this in, showcasing this as a perfect album. Buffalo Springfield, 1966. Kate Bush, I talked about Kate Bush before, fell in love with her my first trip to London in 1978 with Wuthering Heights. But this to me is a perfect album. This really changed. This is a producer's, this is almost like if she were to do Dark Side of the Moon. Now, I didn't include Dark Side of the Moon because that's an obvious choice too. But this Kate Bush album, you know, I think her next album after this is probably her best, with Running Up That Hill and Cloud Bustin'. But this, Sat in My Lap, There Goes a Tenor, Pull Out the Pin, The Dreaming, Night of the Swallow, Get Out of My House, Suspended in Gaffa. Very creative, very adventurous, a gorgeous album cover, a perfect album. I did a whole feature on this guy who died several years ago, like 6-7 years ago maybe now. First album by J.G. Cale, Naturally. Every song on here is wonderful. Intimate, moody, bluesful, Sophie, blues, slow down, Mazzy. Bluesful, soulful, folksy. His guitar playing, he kind of invented the sound that Mark Knopfler would do with the Dire Straits, I think. But Call Me the Breeze, which was covered by, I think, Leonard Skinner, am I right about that? And Magnolia, and Crazy Mama, amazing song. As we all know, after Midnight on here? After Midnight's on here, that Eric Clapton would go and make him a very rich man, covering his songs like Cocaine. Now, the music just got louder, or maybe I just noticed it getting louder in the background. If I don't get shut down here, I have to do this all over again. This is a symphony by Philip Glass, Low. It's the music of David Bowie and Brian Eno. Has nothing to do with this video, but I just kind of felt like this music in the background. Beautiful record. Next, a band I love from Tucson, and Blacklight. I could almost include almost any album by theirs at this point, but I'm picking Blacklight, The Blacklight. Just a gorgeous record. This is an anniversary edition, expanded double album, but Calexico Black White Light. a very majestic, theatrical, spaghetti western-like Italian western music, very Morricone-esque, gorgeous band. I've seen them 4 or 5 times, and every time I'm in awe. There is a great video I suggest you find and watch now during this pandemic. It's Calexico live at the Barbizon in London. An amazing concert film. They sound great. They're augmented by other musicians as well. Beautiful. Live in London, Calexico. You know, of all the stuff, all the pontificating I do and about San Francisco psychedelia, I only picked one this time, and not one that's necessarily my very, very favorite, but it is a perfect album. The very first Country Joe and the Fish album, Electric Music for the Mind and Body. This came out in 1967. And Flying High, it opens. Joe McDonald has the sweetest voice, probably the sweetest voice of all the San Francisco psychedelic bands. They have a little folksy feel to them, very jug band music style, but they really merge that psychedelic stuff well, especially with Not So Sweet Martha Lorraine, Happiness is a Porpoise Mouth, Section 43, Superbird, and The Masked Marauder, and the song Grace, another song I think about Grace Lick. I don't know. I keep thinking, because on their next album, they have a song called Janice, which is definitely about Janis Joplin. But this is a wonderful record on Vanguard, produced by Sam Charters, who produced most of their first 4 or 5 of their records while they were together. Obviously, while they were together, Sam Charters was also someone who produced a lot of early blues artists, very famous in terms of musicologists and producers. So look up Sam Charters if you want to learn something about American music and musicology. I showed this many times, but I had to include it again. Motel Shot, Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. This record came out 1970 or 71, I believe. Has the illusion that was, it's one of the concept of this was like, you know, when bands and artists are on the road and they're in the hotel rooms and they're just jamming around, they're doing their percussion on a suitcase, they don't have the full drum set, hitting maybe at a keyboard and acoustic guitars. It's got a great feel. Delaney, Bonnie, Graham Parsons is on a little bit of this. Duane Allman, Bobby Whitlock, Jim Keltner, Carl Rattle, Leon Russell. Great song. Their only top 30 hit, top 40 hit, Never Ending, what is it called? Never Ending Song of Love. But they also do traditional songs like Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, Where the Soul Never Dies, Will the Circle Be Unbroken. It's got a very rootsy Americana sound. This should, every artist and person who's in Americana and the whole American music into country should be into this. It's more soulful country, very southern, but a gorgeous, gorgeous record. Motel Shot, Delaney and Bonnie and Friends. Now, I went back and forth on Donovan. I mean, you know, Donovan, people think he's only a singles artist with Hurdy Gurdy Man and Sunshine Superman, and every album there's like a couple of hits and rest filler, which I don't believe is the case. But for this, I picked the Anaheim concert. Now, this is a gorgeous album because it does have Mellow Yellow at the very end. So it has one hit. It's got The Fat Angel, a song he wrote. Beautiful song. He wrote mostly songs. There Is a Mountain, which some of you into the Allman Brothers know, because Mountain Jam is based on There Is a Mountain by Donovan. Recorded in Anaheim, 1967, I believe. His father introduced the great Donovan. There is a CD expanded version that came out about 15 years ago, and I wish at some point they put out a vinyl version of the whole concert. The reason they didn't put on the whole concert at the time was a bunch of the songs were new, and he was recording them for what would be Where Your Love Like Heaven and the box set he did with the 2 record set box set. So a lot of songs he was saving for that, so they are not on here. Beautifully recorded, very intimate. I think it's only him and a percussionist, a couple artists. but wonderful record. You know, you can find this pretty cheap. The Donovan concert, well worth listening to. The first Eels record. Eels is really a project by E. He still puts out albums under the name Eels. He had 2 records prior to this under the name E. He does a lot of film scores. I mean, his songs are used in films like Shrek and the others, but every song on this is a perfect record. I like his records. They tend to sound a little the same because he uses but they're very catchy. He's got this throaty voice, but they're very catchy. This got at the end of MTV Play. This is 1996, excuse me. Novocaine for the Soul got a lot of coverage at the time. Great, sort of psychedelic, folky, indie, beautiful record. Susan's House, Beautiful Freak. They're very intimate, emotional songs. His life is going through turmoil. His sister committed suicide. He's had family issues. But I've seen him twice at the Fillmore in San Francisco. This is a spectacular album. I think he was on Hollywood Records, DreamWorks, excuse me. 1996, but a perfect record, Eels, and it's called Beautiful Freak. Probably the one that almost anyone here who follows British UK folk will agree with me on. This is probably the most perfect British UK folk album. Liege and Leaf, and Richard Thompson, Sandy Denny, Dave Maddox, David Swarbrick, Ashley Hutchinson. Gorgeous record, some traditional folk things that they rocked up, so it's got the folk rock feel. Almost every song is, well, every song is, it's a perfect record, so of course every song is amazing. Love it. This is a must, I think, for everyone. It just feels really good. I can put this song on anytime. Sunday morning, Saturday night. There's some upbeat stuff, but it's not like heavy rock and roll. It's acoustic bass, but it's got electric guitars too. Amazing vocals. And Sandy Denny is probably the premier English folk singer throughout the short time, this late 60s, 70s. This is 1969, produced by Joe Boyd. You know, should I pick a Fleetwood Mac album? Yeah. Usually I go for the early period, the Peter Green bluesy period. A lot of people, you know, would pick Rumors as a perfect record, or Self-Titled when they had Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. Not me. Their middle period, Kiln House. Kiln House is a perfect record. I mean, this is the rock. Jeremy Spencer's in this. This is the Jeremy Spencer, Danny Kerwin years. But Station Man and Tell Me All the Things You Do are, to me, 2 perfect songs. The rest are pretty great. I mean, Julie Judy is a sentimental favorite of mine. I had a girlfriend named Judy when this album came out. This is from 1970 and 70 or 71, might be 71. But beautiful record, beautiful cover. I think this is a very perfect record. You know, really, Fleetwood Mac, the only consistency is a rhythm section. John McVie and Mick Fleetwood were the only 2 members that have been there from beginning to end, pretty much. Emmylou Harris, Wrecking Ball, produced by Daniel Lanois. This changed her sound. This brought her into a new realm. This expanded her traditional country and her folk, kind of folky pop country, which is amazing. I'm a big Emmylou Harris fan. This brought her into something a little different, more into Americana, more into a little experimental, but beautiful songwriting. Wrecking Ball is a Neil Young song she covers. Great, perfect record. Could have picked a lot from this band too, but I'm going with Rainy Day Music, the Jayhawks. This is a 2014 reissue. Angeline, Stumbling in the Dark, You Look So Young. I love this record. Again, every record is perfect. You know, there's so many other channels here that'll talk about the Jayhawks and Uncle Tupelo and Wilco and the whole lineage thing. That's not for me right now, but a perfect record. And the Louvin Brothers, Satan is real. Satan is real. Christian life, there's a higher power. The River of Jordan, ready to go home. He can be found. Very Christian-based, kind of country bluegrass music, brothers in harmony, perfect record, beautiful record, gorgeous singing, amazing sounding record. Yep. Ira and Charlie Louvin. You know, I got into this because of Sweetheart of the Rodeo by the Byrds. I didn't pick that. That would have been on here, but I didn't want to do an obvious. This is another obvious choice from me. I mean, there's so many Van Morrison records, but to me, the perfect bang for your buck that I go back, I actually listen to more than Astral Weeks or Moondance, and I love those records, but is St. Dominic's Preview. The long tracks are what make it for me. Almost Independence Day, Listen to the Lion, St. Dominic's Preview. But how it opens up with Jackie Wilson said, just amazing. And I think Dexy Midnight Runners did a nice cover of it in the 80s. But perfect record, perfect album, a perfect album. Warner Brothers Records, that's about 1972. Randy Newman's Good Old Boys. Now, my favorite album to me, a perfect album of his, is Sail Away. I've showed that so many times. I did not feel I wanted to show it here, but Good Old Boys, that came out after, is perfect. Redneck, intense political satire. Not for the faint of heart in some of the verbiage, some of the words that are used. But the song Marie, Louisiana 1927, is a song that would come back in 2005 after Katrina. It's about Louisiana, and the lyric goes, they're trying to wash us away, they're trying to wash us away. What happened down here is the winds have changed, clouds roll in from north and it starts to rain. Rained real hard and rained for a real long time. 6 feet of water in the streets of Evangeline. The river rose all day, the river rose all night. Some people got lost in the flood. Some people got away all right. The river has busted through, clear down to Palaquins. 6 feet of water in the streets of Evangeline. Beautiful water, about a different flood at the time, but came around again for that. Roland's great, Every Man a King, Kingfish. It's amazing how this man, Randy Newman, writes about the South. And I've said this many times, him and Ry Cooder are both from LA, Santa Monica area. And they sound like, when they sing, they sound like Southern boys in a good way. They're soulful. There's some amazing singing, not perfect voices, but I'd say this is a very important record and a perfect record. Nilsson Schmielsen is a perfect record, but I'm going with Son of Schmielsen. This is obviously the follow-up produced by Richard Perry of Harry Nilsson. This is 1972 again. A good, Take 54 is great. Remember, parentheses, Christmas is a gorgeous, gorgeous mood piece. Turn On Your Radio has an amazing guitar introduction. People on this, Nicky Hopkins is all over this, Peter Frampton, Klaus Voormann on bass, obviously Harry Nilsson, Chris Spedding, Ray Cooper, Jim Price, Bobby Keys, horn players who worked extensively with George Harrison, the Rolling Stones, and others. They were the go-to horn section in the 70s for a lot of artists. But this also has the Lottery song. Spaceman is a gorgeous song. It opens side 2 on this. Ambush, I'd Rather Be Dead. You're Breaking My Heart, You're Tearing It Apart, So Fuck You. I use it a lot, that song. It's a perfect song when someone treats you like shit, a partner treats you like shit. But really great record. A perfect album. I'm going with Son of Schmielsen, 1972, Harry Nilsson. One of the great, great songwriters of the 70s. I've showed Sam Phillips a lot, not to be confused with the Sam Phillips Sun Studios, Elvis Presley fame and Sun Studios fame, but Sam Phillips, This is her first debut album on Virgin. She did have a couple albums prior to this that I've never heard. She used to be a Christian artist. She was married for many years to T-Bone Burnett, who produced all these records. Now, the incredible Wow, this came out, I saw her when Virgin did a showcase at Slim's Club in San Francisco in 1988. An amazing artist, amazing vocalist, does a lot of independent stuff in Los Angeles now, does some TV show. I think she did the Gilmore Girls, but her records, Martinis and Bikinis, is a perfect record. But this is a perfect record. One song on here I keep going to is What Do I Do? And it's got some of the most beautiful string arrangements. It's string-based, gorgeous. T-Bone Burnett arranges this stuff just so beautifully. It's got a Beatlesque feel, very pop feel. I don't want to say psychedelic, but there's essence of that. All her records have that. I know on Martinis and Bikinis, the song Strawberry Roads has a total Beatle feel to it. You know that Sam and T-Bone are so influenced by the Beatles, rightly so, in their production style occasionally. But this is a beautiful cover, beautiful record. A perfect record. I've done a feature on this band, Procol Harum. Usually I go with Salty Dog as a perfect album, and it is, but their second album, Shine On Brightly. This is a record I bought when it came out, I think it's 1968, and I remember for whatever reason, well, because it's good, that's why, because it's a perfect record. I played this record 2 to 3 times every day for about a month. That's what you did when you were young, when you get an album. I love this infrared photograph. Looks like it's underwater, but it's kind of really out, like Joshua Tree almost, out in the desert. But it opens up with Quite Rightly So, beautiful song. Shine On Brightly, Skip Softly, which is kind of soulful, Wish Me Well, Ramblin' On. Side 2 has 2 songs, Magdalene and In Hell 'Twas an I, which sounds very pretentious in a way. It's like an 18-minute or so epic. This is when that Gary Brooker, Matthew Fisher on double keyboards, piano and organ. Matthew Fisher obviously did the intro of Whiter Shade of Pale on their first album. But they also, this is when they had Robin Trower on guitar. And on that long piece, there's some great guitar bits. It's a multi-layered piece, almost prog-ish, upbeat, circus-like, poetic, pretentious, but beautiful. So to me, this is a perfect record, Shine On Brightly by Procol Harum. And if you notice, except for the Beatles, a little bit, well, slightly out of order, I just put them alphabetically. So that's the order, and they're not in from good to bad. But this, to me, is a perfect record. I'm ending out with the Young Rascals. Their 1967 record, the song that I got on the radio, that I actually bought this album. Usually I was buying singles at this point by other bands aside from the Beatles, and it's Groovin'. One of the best, Groovin' and Summer in the City to me are almost the 2 best summer songs ever. Summer in the City by the Lovin' Spoonful. But Groovin' by the Young Rascals is an amazing. How Can I Be Sure? Another Felix Cavallari song. It's gorgeous. A Place in the Sun, a cover song they did that Stevie Wonder also had a big hit. A little Stevie Wonder in the 60s. You Better Run, You Better Hide, How Can I Be Sure? I said that. Sueño, Find Somebody. Every song on here is gorgeous. Perfect record. So I'm ending now. It's still in shrink. An original copy too, stereo. Youngbloods. Anyway, I'll do a link to Andrew's channel, and again, maybe this could be a thread. Perfect records. Andrew's really great because he's been around a long time, and he's a vinyl community member that has a very broad taste in records and styles and genres. He goes deep into shit that I've never heard of, but he also is not afraid of the standard type of stuff too. Sometimes, you know, you can go pretentious and stay pretentious. I don't mean pretentious, but you know, experimental, artsy. And I love when it's funny, I watch him on his old man videos, I'm blanking on the name, and I love it. And he seems to be probably the most adventurous of his mates. And I feel like that too with some of my friends, except for I have one, Jazz Shit Brooks, you've met if you've watched these videos. He's very adventurous, but a lot of people as they get older just don't, they just, you know, all they want to hear is Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, and the Beatles, which are great. But open up your, I mean, these are all classic records. This is like classic rock, you know, 101, the records I showed for the most part with a few exceptions. And I didn't go deep with a lot of new music this time, but these are, again, because I know these records really well, anytime I just want to hear something feel comfortable, I pull these records off the shelf. So, Mazzy loves you. Comments, the usual stuff. Take care.